Today on EcoSense for Living, we'll explore nature deficit disorder and how getting your kids back into nature can improve their health and maybe even their attention span.
This generation of children has less contact with nature than any generation in our history. Less time picking blueberries, building tree forts, and exploring creeks.
Well, when I first started looking into this, parents had a sense that this was happening. Even kids had a sense. I think this was in the back of a lot of people's minds, but we had no real language to describe. I mean, this is unprecedented, this disengagement between children and nature. So the phrase nature deficit disorder, which I initially meant is almost tongue-in-cheek, people know it. They know what that is the minute they hear it, and parents in particular resonate to that phrase.
Nature deficit disorder is not a medical diagnosis, so it doesn't have a specific set of symptoms or a specific illness that it represents. But I would say if you're a parent and wondering if your child should get more exposure to nature, that the answer is probably yes.
When I was interviewing parents, I thought that access to nature would be the #1 reason that their kids weren't going outside very much. You know, if they bulldoze down the woods, it's hard to go out in the woods. But what I heard from parents was that the woods could be right there and their kids still weren't going out in them. The deeper reasons had to do with 44 hours a week plugged into some kind of electronic medium. The child's not going to spend a lot of time outdoors. But I think it's a mistake to demonize electronics. Video games, you know, we don't want to make them the new rock and roll. We know what happened when our parents tried to demonize rock and roll, or our grandparents. That's exactly what we wanted. So, but moreover, it's not accurate because there are these deeper issues, and if we place too much emphasis on video games, we'll miss these other issues. One of them is the over-regulation of children's lives. They're dawn till dusk. Many of these kids have all their hours organized and under surveillance by parents, and to the point where some of them are having a hard time thinking for themselves.
There's a number of ways in which the concept of nature deficit disorder may overlap with public health. First, maybe obesity and physical inactivity. Americans and American children are becoming more and more overweight, especially in the past 20, 30 years. The second way it might interact is with mental health. There's been some emerging studies that have looked at how contact with nature may improve mental health, whether it be from attention deficit disorder to wilderness therapy. The last category, and I don't know how to lump it all together, is this concept of wellness being promoted by contact with nature.
There's a study that came out recently that looked at something called executive function in kids. Executive function is that voice in us that says, you know, maybe it's not a great idea if we follow our buddies off the cliff.
Everybody go this way!
But it has everything to do with self-regulation. The best way, apparently, to develop executive function is through make-believe play, through unstructured make-believe play.
The American Academy of Pediatrics has developed a report calling for more unstructured play in children. When kids go outside into nature, it facilitates unstructured play. If there's not toys around, they'll make toys out of sticks or rocks. They'll play with each other, they'll interact with each other, and they develop their own set of rules and their own games.
That's the thing that is rapidly disappearing from childhood. Could this have something to do with some of the behavioral problems that we're seeing? Could it have something to do with creativity later on? We need to give play back to kids. Unstructured, make-believe play. One of the best places to do that is in nature. Another issue, though, that I think is even deeper for parents, or at least felt more deeply, is the sense of fear. That parents now are scared to death to let their kids go outdoors. And that's mainly because of what they perceive about stranger danger. The irony is, if you look at the statistics on, for instance, stranger abductions, you'll see that the vast majority are not by strangers, but by family members or somebody the family knows. And the relative number of them is pretty small. One is too many. But the amount of fear we feel has no relationship really to the number of stranger abductions or that kind of violent crime. So if those numbers are actually going down, the number of stranger abductions is going down, for instance, if that's happening, what's going up? And I'm a journalist, and I think that we need to take ownership of some of this. I mean, all you have to do is watch some of the 24-hour cable channels and you see how they take a handful of terrible crimes against children and then they repeat them over and over and over again. That, to me, is the definition of conditioning. I think we're being conditioned to live in a state of fear. One of the things I've learned since the book came out is that it doesn't seem to matter what somebody's politics or religion is. They always want to tell me about the treehouse they had when they were kids, if they're old enough to have had one. Everybody wants to tell me the story of their special place in nature, and I love hearing those stories.
We had the Girl Scout woods, which was probably about 100 acres, very close to my house, and so from dawn to dusk, that's where I was, and it was just a wonderful experience. We rode our bikes, we played, we created, pretend fires. I don't know what we did all day, but we were there all day long playing.
We just followed the paths that were in the woods. We sometimes had a cops and robbers kind of, or cowboy and Indians kind of game where, paintballs is the kind of thing they do more recently, but ours would just say, "We got you," and ordinarily we'd accept that because somebody was surprised us from behind a tree or whatever. But that was more of a freelance kind of thing.
Many Saturdays we would all get together with our bikes, fix a sandwich, pick up a knee-high orange on the way, and go to Spivey Mountain. I'm sure Spivey was not a mountain, but it was a tall hill. It had no access except to just climb up the side of it. And we would do that, have our picnic up there and sit around and talk, and then go on back down, ride our bicycles home. We might be gone 3 or 4 hours. Nobody cared. Everybody knew where we were. They were not worried about it. It was just a good place to go.
Younger people have fewer stories, and it's getting to be fewer and fewer. Nobody wants to be part of the last generation for whom it was normal for kids to go outside and just muck around in the woods, just to play in nature. People feel this deeply. So all kinds of people are coming to the table that wouldn't normally get together. A business is coming together with conservationists, with education, with medical folks. And they're launching regional campaigns, over 40 of them in North America, that are getting kids outdoors. No one can look at what's happened in the last couple of years and not have some hope. I think that 3 basic things have to happen. I think the good news about the great gifts that nature gives to kids developmentally, that good news needs to get out there to every parent, every educator, every medical person. The second thing that needs to happen is that because the fear is unlikely to go away of strangers, no matter how unrealistic it sometimes is, the fear is felt to be real. That means that it's not going to happen as it did when we were kids. The days of telling the kids, go outside, don't come back in till the street lights come on, those days in most neighborhoods are probably not going to come back. That means that as parents, as grandparents, we're going to have to take kids into nature ourselves. It's going to have to be much more intentional. The third thing that is going to need to happen is that because we have a young generation of parents coming up right now that had very little experience in nature, and even when they hear how great it is for their kids and want that for their kids, they're not going to know how to do it, a lot of them. So that means we have to invest far more support in the kinds of institutions and organizations that help kids and parents get outside. That's everything from scouting to the nature centers to the schools with outdoor classrooms. Those are going to become far more important in the future.
In Great Britain, they have a notion called eco-psychology. The idea is that the more removed you are from nature, the more likely you are to feel lost and confused. Dr. David Busch, a child psychologist in North Georgia, uses total immersion nature therapy to calm and center children with ADHD.
On that trellis over there is wild blackberries, over there is boysenberries, red raspberries, purple raspberries, tame blackberries. Back there are strawberries, blueberries, and gooseberries. Berries grow really well here, so I grow every kind. I got cranberries too. Grow every kind of berry I can. But come on in, I'll show you something in my shop here I think you'll find interesting. Don't drop them, okay? Just hold it, put one hand on top and one hand on the bottom, see, and that way it won't jump out of your hand. One hand on the top and one on the bottom. It's weird to think about how they were just in an egg, you know, just 3 or 4 days ago. Now, what I want you to do is I want you to take that baby chick and hold it in your right hand. See how I've got it like that with its wings between my fingers like that? And once you got it like that, you can hold its little feet down with your little finger like that and put it right up to your ear. Put its chest right against your ear. You're going to hear its heartbeat. 200 years ago, we were an agrarian society, and everybody grew up working on the family farm and hunting and fishing all the time. And you didn't see the significant percentage of cases you're seeing in ADHD now when we were more closely connected with nature. Yeah, just find you one that looks a little bigger than the rest, and we'll wash them off and you can have a carrot for breakfast. We're going to a place called Black Bear Cove. Most of the young men with ADHD have gravitated towards video games. They're generally better than others at the video games, and that's something that they can call on for social acceptance. You know, they may not be as successful at math or spelling, but they can get some social points in the classroom and on the playground by knowing all about the latest video games. And I've seen them come into nature and really respond positively. Okay, so start looking for a bunch of sticks and just lean them up against here like that. Well, there's a growing body of evidence that exposure to television in preschool years and toddler years has a negative impact on subsequent learning and ability to focus the attention. It's basically well established that using the television as a babysitter, you know, in young children, and then exposure to video games, these are things that are carefully designed to reach out and grab the viewer's attention. And then the individual goes into nature, and it's such a contrast where you have to reach out with your mind and seek out the meaning and look for salamanders and look for the yellow jackets and the raccoons and the deer and the bear and the trees and the plants. You're reaching out and apprehending the meaning and taking the meaning from what's around you.
So what's the purpose of what you're building here?
Well, this is a shelter that can be used in the forest indefinitely to stay warm and dry in any kind of weather, any kind of condition. On each hike, we learn a survival skill, and then we talk about a metaphor of a daily life survival skill.
So this is something you learn things from them that you might not have ever known about?
Sure, yeah. Guys that wouldn't talk to me in the office, you take them out in the woods and they'll just start going, you know.
Like, if I'm having problems, I call my older brother. He's like my best friend, but then again, he's still my big brother. He still have to tell me what's right from wrong, and if I need help, anything, like, say for instance, or some conflict, he'll tell me as a friend, and he'll tell me as a big brother.
Whenever I'm sad or mad or frustrated about something, I can just go to my mom. She can tell me what I can do about this, if I can do anything for others.
This was a good experience. I didn't expect this. I never seen anything like this before, but I've been in the woods, but I never been deep in the woods like this. I appreciate this tour.
I saw the boys initially when we went in the woods dodging every little flying insect that flew by them and overreacting to every little spider web in their path, you know. And by the time we were at the end of just a 3-hour hike, they were no longer doing that. You know, they came to understand that they didn't need to really be fearful in nature. It's much more dangerous in a city than it is in nature. Even if you live in a high-rise apartment building, you can go up on the roof many times and lay down and just watch the sky at night, listen to the stars, watch the clouds float by and feel the wind currents at the different levels. Go out into a park if you can with a magnifying glass or a microscope and have fun, you know. Nature is fun, it's not boring. And whether you have an attention problem or depression or anxiety, any of these things, going out in nature and experiencing peace and quiet and centering yourself in the place that is balanced and in harmony is very healing, curative.
From the beginning of the 1900s until now, American farm households have dropped from 40% to less than 2% of our population. Farming was a classic American way to connect with the land, and today there are places where the tradition continues, even in the nooks between concrete and asphalt.
Nathaniel, here's a flower. That's a black-eyed pea right there. Have you ever eaten black-eyed peas before?
Yeah, I like peas.
You like peas? Well, this is a baby one, and next week we'll be able to open it up and eat it. So first it's the flower, and then it's a little baby pea, and then it grows up to be a bigger pea. We can look inside. You guys want to see inside? And we can see the baby peas.
The garden was started 11 years ago by a woman named Sally Wild and other neighbors. And really it was in response to a lack of place for youth to come and experience nature firsthand. So for example, digging for worms or understanding that worms weren't dangerous. The main goal of it is that Sally just felt concerned that if youth, our future, were not getting their hands in the dirt, how would they in turn want to care for the earth in a meaningful way? And the best way to do that is to get them involved and to care about it and to defend it.
You guys remember what those are called? The little gray ones? Is that a roly-poly?
Here. You don't want
Did you get one?
Here.
Oh, here you go.
I get one.
You got one?
I got one.
Excellent. You want to put it in the bucket?
Come on. Me too.
There, good job. You're a good digger, Abe.
While at BCAP, we're doing a lot of things in groups. We're working together to light smokers, so there's a lot of interaction with the kids going on there, that they're learning how to work with each other. In an anxiety situation, there's smoke and there's fire. So they're learning respect for fire, they're learning respect for nature, and they're learning respect for each other as they work together. Where's the good smoker?
I thought that honeybees were mean and stuff and they protected their honey, but it turns out that they're not mean and they can share enough honey for us, but store-bought isn't as good as just plain honey.
Kids are always excited. It's something new for them, so their excitement seems to override their fear.
The root of the garden is bringing youth here to provide a different place for them to have free play, to have creative imagination. And so the community has a lot of wonderful playgrounds, but they are, concrete, plastic, pre-molded, and this is a place where kids can come and chase butterflies with a net. They can look for the frogs in the pond. They can turn over stumps and find staghorn beetles. So really, this is just a very different play space for exploration.
The green team was basically developed to give middle school girls a chance to work together, build teamwork, build self-esteem through doing garden-based activities. They basically come up with ideas of things to sell and market them and sell them at the farmer's market every week. So we do different arts and crafts and then all the produce that we can grow and pick it.
I chose to be on the green team because it sounded really interesting, picking crops and finding out how you grow them and what you do to help them prosper.
So the biggest misconception that children have about nature, and I think this goes for adults too, is that it's dangerous and somehow more dangerous than crossing the street with 60-mile-per-hour cars flying by you. So I'll find children who run screaming and crying from worms and bees and things like that, like literally having panic attacks because they're not used to things moving around them in that kind of a way. They're used to video games and things like that. So with time, the same kids who run screaming and crying from these things, they eventually will get over it when they see other children and adults around them acting normally.
East Lake Commons is a very unique community that is designed so that you have to associate with your neighbors. So instead of being isolated in suburbia, we have chosen intentional community. We perform all the duties of our community that maybe a HOA management company might normally perform. So we are choosing to live in an intimate setting. We all have our own private homes, but we have common meals. We see each other coming and going. When anybody ever needs anything, you just have to ask and somebody will come forth to help you out with whatever it is. So it truly is a village.
I grew up in Savannah in a small town, and Wendy grew up in Philadelphia, very neighborhood-oriented community. And we both grew up with multiple neighborhood parents. So this community really takes us back to our childhood, where we knew our neighbors, where we borrowed things, where you could say, hey, can you look after Austin or Christian? So it takes us back to our childhood, which makes it really comfortable.
Yeah, during our childhood, I lived in a concrete jungle. This was Philadelphia, it was a row home. There was no green space around. However, the kids played outside and we made up all sorts of games that I still remember to this day. And there was a lot of childhood dynamics. I learned a lot about myself just through playing with other kids. And so being at ELC reminds me so much of that. Whereas where we lived before we moved here, we didn't know our neighbors and it would have been impossible. There weren't even any kids on a block in order to create that sort of dynamic. Just knowing that this was a place where kids would explore and enjoy and have identity outside of me, and I just felt it right away, and we knew that it would just be a great place for a family to kind of be able to be a unit within themselves but a part of something bigger.
We also have a 5-acre organic garden that we lease out to a farmer, and in exchange he farms that sustainably and organically and offers us the vegetables. I think as a parent, I know that I am always concerned about my children's safety, and my inclination is to structure their time, enroll them in lessons, know where they are every minute of the day. But here I have the luxury of breathing more and relaxing more and letting go of that need, that worry of where are they, where, I can allow them their freedom to have free play. And I think that is the most important thing. When I can look out my window and see my 8-year-old with the boy across the path out there doing imaginary cooking, they are making cakes and pies and mixing, and they've got their grass being salad. That is going to be building her skills, her social skills, way beyond anything that I could ever set up for her. Do I want to ride my bike? Do I want to go find somebody to play with? Do I just want to sit on the grass and watch the ants crawl through? That she has the choice to pick is empowering in and of itself, instead of me structuring her day for her. We are in an oasis in a large urban area. Most people are surprised at how intimate and woody it is and how nature-filled that we can just walk out our doors and have this wonderful community. It's much more than just a neighborhood. So yes, we have access to the urban things around here, but what really counts is what's outside our own front door.
They don't call it the great outdoors for nothing. For more ideas on how to have fun outside, visit childrenandnature.org and start creating your own outdoor adventure.
A few weeks ago, I got an email from a second grade teacher in Virginia. His family had read the book and become inspired, and they started getting outside more and having outdoor adventures. And one day his 5-year-old turns to him and says, "Dad, how come we're the only family having this much fun? Shouldn't other families have fun?" So he started talking to his neighbor families, and a community paper got a hold of the idea. Within a very short period of time, he had 137 families on his email list, all of whom were suddenly emailing each other and phone calling each other and arranging essentially outdoor play dates among families, like 2 or 3 families at a time. Would plan, next Saturday we're going to go to the park, we're going to go fishing, we're going to do some stream reclamation, whatever. I think that deals with several issues. One is it deals with the fear issue. Families will feel there's safety numbers. The second thing it deals with is you don't have to wait for funding. You can do it right now. Create a family nature club or network. The third thing that it deals with is motivation. If you've got families that are relying on you to show up you're going to actually do that experience instead of think about it as an abstraction. And it also restores a sense of community, and people have fun together. I mean, what a concept. One father handed me a photograph of his little girl and her best friend on top of a mound of dirt. And they were sitting there waving their plastic buckets and shovels around in the air. It turned out he had figured out that a small truckload of dirt costs the same as a video game. So he had ordered a truckload of dirt and had it dumped in his yard. His kids had a great time. I think that wilderness is nature, but I think we also have to look at nearby nature. Nearby nature can be the clump of trees at the end of the cul-de-sac or the ravine behind the house, or a little community garden. Nearby nature may not look like much to an adult's eyes. It may look insignificant, that little clump of trees. To a child, that can be the whole universe, though. That can be the entry point. So we have to value those places, too. Even the densest of cities and the oldest of neighborhoods have nearby nature. You can find it. Kids can find it.